Hi everyone, my name is Cindy Warren and I am Megan Weaver's grandmother, and she asked me to speak openly about our experience in Cuba and give you a personal account for what we saw there. So my husband and I, Megan's grandfather Mike, started going to Cuba in partnership with First United Methodist Church here in Houston back in 2003. And for the next 15 years, we went back at least twice a year. So we got an experience of being able to actually watch, all the families that were in the church grow up. We got an experience where we lived in the homes with the families, and that opened our eyes to all the many blessings that we have here in the United States. And of course, we got the experience of what it's like to live in a socialist or a communist country. So part of what we discovered, and this conversation is not political in any way, was our personal experience. There were many times when we were there, we would be staying in the homes illegally with the pastor and the pastor's wife. The church we supported was about 30 minutes outside of Havana, which is the capital city. So we stayed with the pastor's wife and the actual pastor and the pastor's wife and their 3 boys, and would, eat, would shower, would, prepare food, would sleep all, in their home for the week. And what, of course, we notice of supplies as far as food, very, very rationed. They actually have free food stamps that you go every single day and get your bread and go to the market and pick up a few items depending on how many people are in your family. But there's no way to live on that food. So what ends up happening is that there's a very strong black market in place where you can buy stuff, but it's done under a cloak and dagger type situation. That was complicated. I mentioned that we were staying in their homes illegally because there's a tremendous amount of censorship and oppression from the government, and it's just not a free country. You can't speak freely. You actually must be always concerned with being under the watchful eye of anybody who could potentially be a spy. This sounds like it's really blown up, but this was really what the experience was. And the people themselves just got used to it. So we tried to be very, very careful because, of course, if we did anything, it wouldn't reflect badly on us. It would reflect badly on the family and the church. So, we are always grateful for what we were able to pull together as far as food, but they live like that all the time. That's all we had to do was basically go through it for a week. One of the things that consistently happened was that the electricity would go off for the entire island. And this sometimes was perceived as being a judgment from the leadership, who at the time was Fidel Castro. And it was, for instance, there'd be a festival in July that celebrated Castro coming into power. And if the folks around Cuba didn't celebrate and come out of their houses and throw big rallies and things, that ended up being problematic. So the way that Castro would get back at them was to just cut off the electricity and keep it off, sometimes for days. So just a small example of the way that the government treated their own people. The beds themselves that we slept on were beds from, I don't know, maybe the 1950s before Castro came to power. everything there is so expensive because of the way that money is handled. So for instance, you would think that a doctor in Cuba would, have made it well, like in the United States. And the thing that we were able to do was actually replace the salaries of the church members. They could stop what they were doing for a living, and we could actually contribute to their salaries, and they could do the mission work full time and basically make the same money. So a doctor might have changed over the years, but the last recollection I had, it was like he made $25, $30 a month. And that was it. And that was supposed to maintain the family and buy everything that they needed. So super simple for us to supplement that. And that's part of what we did in order to get the word out. But the families, the people that we met while we were there will be lifelong family. There's a tremendous amount of joy with the Cubans that you'll notice if you ever get to go. I recommend if you go, don't stay in Havana, go outside of Havana and see how the real world is. Go to a clinic outside of Havana. They are very propagandized around healthcare, and you can barely get a Band-Aid, is the real truth of the matter. We learned that when you if you got in an accident, a car accident, and they called the ambulance, likely the ambulance would not come. So you would need to, find a way to get to the hospital. And then once you're in the hospital, you actually get no food, you get minimal care, and your family has to be there with you and bring you breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day and make sure that, you're basically taken care of. And that's their healthcare system for the actual Cubans. You won't see that if you are listening to any other propaganda. Breaks your heart. It breaks your heart.